Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. And this is the place where we like to get together and talk about all things writing for writers and by writers. My name's Jean Wise. I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm a nonfiction writer, and I'm joined here today by Johnny Alexander, our award-winning fiction writer. We love having Johnny here with us. We never know where she's going to be. Where are you right now, Johnny?
I'm outside of Memphis at my sister's home, taking care of altogether 8 dogs, 4 cats, and 3 alpaca while she's on a business trip.
Wow. Well, you're busy, so we're glad you're with us and stuff. And we also have our Energizer Bunny, Bethany Jett, who is always doing things. She's an award-winning nonfiction writer, and she's with us, and she gets the honor today to introduce our special guest, and I'm excited to have us talk about branding today, because I think that's a topic we all need. So, Bethany, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce a special friend that we got with us today. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very excited to introduce Cody Morehead today. I met Cody at Blue Ridge last year, and we just hit it off. I think we talked for like an hour, like in the appointment room, about church and things. And he's a youth minister at his church, but he has a lot of titles too. Like Energizer Bunny really is Cody. So Cody is the creative director for Serious Writer Inc. So he handles all the graphic design for all the companies, and it's beautiful. And then he also runs PubZoo, which is another division underneath Serious Writer Inc. for authors who want websites and logos, and he's doing book covers. He did Dell's book cover, which is gorgeous, and the trailer. So I'm just doing all these little plugs so you can see Cody's work. And he's also truly a great friend, and his wife, Bethany, I just saw her come in, is in the chat, and she's incredible too. So they do a quirky couple thing on Instagram. So these are people you want to follow. I love them so much. They're so dear to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop right there and turn it over to Cody so we can talk about branding today.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you. I like the title Energizer Bunny. I think that's a good one. So, yeah, I'm pretty much I'm the guy that likes to talk about the big picture. I'm the guy that likes to talk about what's going on that ties everything together, because when we talk about branding, it's really the big picture of who you are and who you're trying to sell. And so I get excited. That jazzes me up. I get excited to talk about, the big picture and what that all looks like. And so when it comes to branding, I ask some really specific questions about what people are trying to accomplish. And all the clients that I work with, whether they're in the Christian market, general market, whether I consult with churches and help them kind of focus their vision as well. The questions I ask are always about the me, mission, and vision. Those are the 3 big things that I like to discuss with people about their brand. And
Can you talk a little bit the difference between mission and vision?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Okay, so what at least as a company, as PubZoo Creative, what we like to define as me, mission, and vision is me is all about identity, right? What is the identity of, not just if you're a company, what's your identity as a company? If you're a writer, what's your identity? Like what do people need to know about you? And if they don't know it in the first 8 seconds, they might not ever know it. And that's the crazy part. So that's why we talk about mission and vision as a follow-up, because mission is the tangible. It's the boots on the ground. It's the very real nitty gritty that somebody wants to accomplish, right? When you're given a mission, you have an objective, right? So that's why we refer to it as mission. But the difference between mission is vision is very intangible. It's an abstract concept. And so when we tell people what vision is, it's really the heart behind their organization. So how to figure out the me is to really finalize the mission and vision, because you don't really know what your identity is until you're asked, well, what's your mission? So, and a lot of times with authors, what we'll ask is, well, what's your mission? Well, what? I didn't know I needed to ask that question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Well, what's your vision?
That photo.
And so because a lot of times we don't think through that. We just think, oh, well, I want to sell a book, or I want to write a blog, and this is what I want to write it about. But a lot of times what mission and vision do is they're the ultimate catalyzer, and they're the ultimate funnel for what somebody really wants to do with their career. Mm-hmm. And so we're really keen on asking. I'm really keen on asking those questions, because a lot of times, whether we think we do or we don't actually know our identity, especially as authors. We are a lot of things to a lot of people, right? I say that all the time. Like when you're everything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody, right? And so that mission and vision and identity, what they really do is they help us to align ourselves in a very specific direction. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that scares people, because they're like, well, I want to write children's books, and I also want to write, adult nonfiction, or I want to do this and I want to do that. But the truth of all of that is you can do those things, but you're going to have to understand and adopt the understanding that those things are going to have to stay in separate boxes. Because for each of those, there's going to be a different mission and vision and identity. And so when we come to branding, sometimes what happens with individual people's brands is when they become all these different things and they get excited about all the things that they're working towards, they forget that each one of those has a very different perspective and thing that it is pushing for. So, yeah. But, yeah.
Wow.
So,
that is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a lot. But, I think it's hard to do. I think it's hard to do as writers,
It is. Yeah.
I will tell you, I have in my one catalog, my one notebook here, a vision and a mission. And I have, couldn't tell you what it is right off.
Yeah.
I wrote it once. So how do we do that? I guess. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Well, part of the process for me is I like to help people understand that, but that centralizing your mission doesn't always pigeonhole you either, right? Okay. Like it doesn't keep you from doing multiple things. But what it does is it really makes you refine what you do and how you do it best, right? My biggest thing is the best gift you've ever been given is you. Right? It's not your identity, the thing that you have, right? But really, like I have posters all through my office, because as a pastor, I believe in God, so all through my office, I have posters that say the best gift God ever gave you is your identity, right? Like who you are, and because that's my belief, who you are really matters, because it's the one thing that you have that nobody else has, right? Like there's no one that has ever been created or ever will be created that is created like you. And so being you in itself is incredible, because you have this incredible platform and this incredible way that you can do things that nobody else can do it. And so when I go and perform, or when I go and speak, and when I talk at conferences, or when I do my crazy parodies and perform in front of people, right, the thing I tell them is the reason I do that is because I learned early on there's nobody else like me. And that sometimes we get scared to say that because we're fearful of being arrogant, or we're fearful to say well, I'm so great, but the truth is you are, so own it, don't be scared of the fact that you're the only person like you.
No, it's frightening.
Yeah, it is frightening. Yeah.
It
is frightening, especially when you're me. So
like when Michael Scott, you have to wake up every day being you. It's hard to be you. It
is. Yeah.
And don't you think it evolves to what I write in January as my mission and my vision, maybe something totally different?
Absolutely. What we always tell clients is that it might change and you're going to have to be okay with that. Right. And honestly, it should. It not only might it change, it should change, because as the market shift, as what people interest groups shift, as the reality of your clientele and your audience shifts, you're going to have to change your mission and your vision. to incorporate an ever-changing market of people. And that's why your brand, we talk about this, brand awareness, brand identity is so important, because like as the market shift, your brand has to shift.
Yeah.
We talk about, I'm going to talk about two different things. I want this to be really clear. I'm an Apple guy. Okay. So I love Apple, but I also think PC is great. So I don't want it to come across that I don't like PC. Okay. Or that I'm biased in any way. Cause I'm not, I think both.
Like Jean and I just became biased with you in that moment.
Yeah. So, but I want you to know, like, I respect both companies, and you can't take away from Dell, Dell or Alienware or Sony or Vio. Like, they're incredible way to innovate, because each of those companies does something incredible, right? But there's this incredible story about, the way our brands work, right? And the brands that are most successful versus the brands that are less successful. And if you there's a book out there called Positioning, and it's like the art of war for marketing, and it's incredible. It's really great. But it's called Positioning, and it talks about the 4 different methods of marketing and branding and how things work, right? And there's 2 different mindsets that come out from marketing and branding, right? And this is something I'm really keen on. Okay, so there's 2 there, and so to explain this, I'm going to explain something else, if that's okay.
Yep.
So have you ever heard of game theory? You ever heard of game theory?
Yes.
Okay. So there are, so I'm going to explain this right now. There are 2 types of game theory. There's infinite and finite. So there's infinite game theory and finite game theory. Now the premise for both is it's very simple, all right? There is a win at the end, right? So for finite game theory, there is a definitive winner at the end of the game, right? So you're playing Uno, you're playing dominoes, somebody wins, all right? The whole point of playing the game is to win in that scenario, right? That's a finite game because there's an end to it. It's finite, right? Then there's infinite. Okay, now infinite game theory suggests that the point of the game is not necessarily to win, but to continue playing, right? It's almost like survival of the fittest. It's not about winning the end of the game. It's about staying in the game the longest, right? And so the companies and brands that develop this mentality of, well, I just want to beat the competition and be at the top, inevitably fail. They inevitably fail. It's historical, and it's crazy, especially with capitalism. We have this open market. The companies that have adapted and adopted to this finite game theory, that there's a winner and that they can win the game, have inevitably lost, right? A good example of this is Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster and Netflix. We talked about this before. Netflix did not play the game to win the game. They played the game to stay in the game, right?
And Blockbuster said no.
The game to win the game, right? But when you play the game to win the game, you forget that your whole point is to stay in the game, right?
Yep.
And as businesses and as writers, as people who own companies and so on and so forth, our goal is not to win the game. It's to keep playing the game, right? Like an author's job is not to write a book and make it, right? That's everybody thinks that. Oh, if I can write a book and get published with a house, it's all done. I'm good. Write the checks. We're finished, right? Right? But that's not the case.
That's finite, isn't it?
Exactly. That's finite. That's this understanding of I can win the game. But when you realize you can't win the game and that the whole point is to keep playing, you adapt yourself completely differently. And so that's where infinite game theory is so important. So Apple and PC, this is this great story. There's this guy out there called Simon Sinek. I don't know if this incredible researcher. He goes and speaks all over the place. Yep, it's a great book, right? Start with why. All right, that's an incredible book. It talks about millennials in this, and he talks about the marketplace, and he's this guru when it comes to marketing and branding and all he does. I really enjoy some of his stuff. But he tells this story of going to the International Education Bureau, right? This incredible expo that invited all these tech companies to come out and work with students on the education system and what things they could do to improve their educational system, right? And so Simon's telling the story, and he said both Apple and PC were there, right? And during PC's presentation, the Dell PC, or so on and so forth, all they talked about was what they were doing better than Apple, right? Like they were talking about, we're doing this, is Apple can't do this, and Apple can't do this, and you don't have the kind of stuff that we have more stuff than Apple has, and we're so great. And he said it was just over and over and over again. And afterwards, they gave him a Zoom, so you know how long ago this was because it was a Zoom. Yeah, right. So they gave him a Zune, and it was before the iPod had come out. It was, it was right after the iPad had come out, and he had this Zune, and so it was beautiful. It was an incredible piece of machinery. It was just, and the design and the way they had put it was great. It was wonderful. And as most of you know, the Zune's no longer around, and about in the ballpark of 70% of the population have iPhones. So it's good for you, Dell. Dell says you still have, right. So they really don't. They really no longer exist, right? So Simon's talking about this, and then he says, well, Apple gets up to do their presentation, and Apple doesn't talk about PC. They don't talk about how much better they are than PC or Dell or any of these other companies. What they do is they talk about what they can do to help out in the world of education. Yeah. And they just continue. Everything they talked about was what they could do to help out the world of education. Here's something that we might be able to do that could help out. Here's something we're adapting and developing to work on something, right? And so he gets done, and he's with both executives, right? And Dell just continues. He said the PC people just continued to tell him how great PC was and how they do all this other stuff that Apple, Apple doesn't do this, Apple doesn't do that. And he said, so he tried something. So he took his Zune out, and he went over to the Apple execs, and he said, man, have you seen this? It's a beautiful piece of machinery. I gotta say, it's probably better than the iPod. And he said he would never forget the way they responded. The Apple exec looked at him and he said, I'm sure it probably is. That's the difference between finite game theory and infinite game theory. See, Dell wasn't in that moment. PC was in it to win it, right? Yeah. And Apple was just in it to keep playing the game. If we can develop ourselves in our personal brands, in our personal lives, to be infinite in our theory of how we work, we're always going to be willing to adapt and change and admit that we're not the best, but we are the only one of us, right? Wow. And so that's why infinite game theory matters so much in your brand, because having this understanding that you are continually trying to update and improve what you're doing matters so much in the grand scheme of what you're trying to accomplish. Writers don't write one book and are done. They don't write one bestseller and are finished, right? They're continually writing because of the fact that they are so intent on continuing to play the game, right?
Yeah.
But that's not always how we think about our brand either, right?
But as you're saying this, you were talking about Apple, and I just keep coming back to their one image of the apple with the little bite. That has stayed all the way through all these changes. There's been like an anchor of one thing that has stayed true. You see that emblem. I've got it here on umpteen things. You see this emblem, and there it is. Yeah, I can show it there on my mouse. Yeah, there. You know exactly what it is. So they've had this philosophy behind to grow their business, but they've had something of also stability that speaks to the public. I don't know what you could say about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to add on to what Cody was saying too about like the mission. Cody, it's brilliant, because somebody was asking like, do I need multiple websites if I'm writing different things? And going back to the Apple example with Simon Sinek, he said one of the reasons that Apple set apart is because they started with their mission, which is to think outside the box, to design beautiful products. And one of those products is a computer. So instead of saying we're a computer company, instead of saying I only write nonfiction or I'm only a novelist, they said this is what we do, and this is the products that we do. So if we think of that as authors, like your mission, like Cody was saying, like Apple, and then I write some nonfiction, and then I also write some novels, and I also write poetry. I mean, if we think that model just going down, it just works so well for writers. I love that.
Yeah,
and I love that you do that with your clients too, when they're coming to you for your,
Well, one thing, I'll tell you something. With my clients, I tell them to stop thinking like an author. So, I know you're going to hate me for that, but I tell them that. Stop thinking like an author. Start thinking like a company. What are you doing to reach the market that you want to reach? Because companies are asking that question, and they're going to reach their market. If you're not asking what market you want to reach, you're probably not going to reach them, right? If you don't know what your brand is, if you don't know what your identity is, you're not going to have any place to start as a writer to know what you need to do to market yourself. Right? And that's why we have these shotgun blasts, right? It's the difference between a sniper rifle and a shotgun blast, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have companies are sniper rifles. People who are marketing themselves are shotgun blasts, right?
I
Well,
agree.
if I just post a bunch on Facebook, or if I just do a paid ad, or if I just do Instagram, or if I just do Twitter, like one thing is going to solve, if I do everything, it's going to solve my problems. But I've really been honest with my clients. Like, they're like, well, should I use Facebook? Well, for what you're doing, no. You should be on Instagram, because everything you're doing is image-based. And Instagram is the #1 market for image-based marketing. So I don't know why you would be on Facebook. Facebook's more info-oriented. Well, I'm doing this book about, moms and what they should have. Should I be on Instagram? No, be on Facebook, because moms are on Facebook. Right. Like the markets show that moms are on Facebook. Well, I've got this nonfiction book that I'm trying to sell. Like, what should I be doing? You should be getting all over LinkedIn and sharing your information with professionals that want to hear your story. Right. So how we market has to change based on what we're marketing. Right. I can't take a machine gun and market it to 5-year-olds. Right? Like, oh, you need to get this handgun. It wouldn't work. No parent's going to let their kid buy them. Like, that's the dumbest marketing scheme ever, right? You're thinking, like, oh, why would you even come up with that?
Like, where'd that come from?
Right? That doesn't even make any sense, right? But what we do as authors, as writers, as people who don't really think through our product, is we're doing the exact same thing. We're taking a target market that we think will want what we have, and we're trying to push it without really doing the research to make it happen. Right? And that's why your brand is so important, because when you identify who you are, it helps you figure out what market you're going to reach most effectively.
So where do we start? I mean, I think this is great, but where do we start as a writer who is focused on maybe a series of books? I think most of the people here are in this for the long run, more than one book type people. So we're a little bit beyond that, but where do we start the idea that of a company, where do we start?
Well, first, I think you have to ask yourself some intuitive questions about what you're doing. First of all, like, this is one thing. Like, sometimes we confuse passion and performance. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes we confuse what we're very excited about doing with the success of what we're doing, right? And so we need to. I do think that writers. We have a tendency as writers to think because we write really well that people want to buy. I've read brilliant manuscripts from people, right, that have a platform of about 15 people, right? Like, they're like, well, why can't I sell my books? Because you don't know enough people. Right? Like, like, you're a brilliant writer, and I want to put this in, I want to put this in somebody's hands, or, as a publishing house, I want to be able to send this to a publishing house and be like, oh my gosh, you're the next J.K. Rowling or James Patterson. I want to be able to say those things, but you don't even know who you are in the industry. So how can you expect to communicate that to a publishing house? Right? And so you have to start asking questions that businesses ask, which are, what is our target market? Right? Okay. When you're writing, what is my target market? Yep. When I'm writing this book, as passionate as I am, what am I doing to adapt it to the market that I'm trying to sell it to? Mm-hmm. Right? That's what separates good writers from successful authors. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's the question. The next thing I think you need to ask is, who's gonna buy this?
Yeah.
Not just because those are different questions. I think sometimes we think, oh, who's my target market and who's gonna buy this? We think completely differently, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're selling to children are not buying your product. Mothers are, right? Mothers and fathers. So, and then the next step, all right, when you've singled out and figured out kind of all these things, is what am I doing to build the mystery and anticipation that I need for what I'm selling, right? One of the best things, and this is, I'll go back to Apple, because I do think Apple, I think they're time tested, just like Disney, just like Sony, just like these big corporations. They're very time tested and they know what they're doing. Another Amazon, they're time tested companies, right? So one thing that Apple is very keen on is the anticipation factor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going to just be honest with you. They sold us the same crap. They did.
They did 10 times.
They sold us the exact same crap. And do you know who was excited to buy it? Me. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get that iPhone 8. Oh my, it can see my face. Oh, it's amazing. Like, we just don't because that's what we think, right? But they sold us, they're geniuses, because it was all about the anticipation.
Think about the iPad is. You can make calls and do FaceTime, but you've got the iPad, the computer, the phone.
Yeah, you got all these.
The greatest, in my opinion, the greatest marketing scheme in the history of marketing was the iPad mini launch. Okay? They sold us a bigger iPhone and a smaller iPad and made a world. And do you know that the iPad mini is the largest sales bracket in the tablet bracket? Like, right now, it's crazy. Like, they're selling these things like crazy. Like, you sold me a smaller iPad. Why am I happier with less? Like,
I probably paid more.
Like, because they're geniuses about the way that they build anticipation for a product, right? We don't, a lot of times we're just like, oh, here's my launch party, come to my launch party, and we'll eat popcorn, and no, tell me something is coming. Tell me that I should be desperate to buy this, right? Do a bunch of dots at the end of your sentence on a black screen and just say, something's coming, ...
thing,
Yes.
or our angst as we're working on something. I've had a lot of trouble with my writing this week, and I get I can put that down. That is a good thing to share.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And don't overshare. I think that's our problem, right?
Okay.
We overshare, right? I use the analogy of a nervous teenager on their first date, right? They don't know how to keep their mouth shut and not overshare things, right? Like, I love you. Oh, it's our first date. You don't don't over. Mentality, right? Like the anticipation. Alfred Hitchcock, who could arguably be the best suspense thriller writer and director in history, right? Said that the terror is not in the bang, but in the anticipation of it. Right. And so what he understands is that it's not about the bang, it's not about the product, it's about the anticipation. Right. If you can build an anticipation about what you're doing, if you can build a suspense about what you're doing, like, people are gonna want to know what's going on. Like, you're letting.
He also said.
Well, yeah. No. Go. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, he also, one thing I remember Hitchcock saying was that the sound of the door opening is more frightening than you watching the door open. So that same kind of thing, like, translate that into writing world, but like something's coming in, but not being so, this is what's happening. It is your birthday. Like, doing more other things.
And another thing, like, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Jaws, the movie, right? A timeless classic, right? Terrifying movie. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep that night after watching it, and I didn't want to sleep I didn't want to swim in the pool. Okay, like, I didn't want to go. I knew there were no sharks in my pool, but I was still terrified in my pool. Like I didn't want to go in the water again, right? This terrifying movie. But do you realize, like, you barely ever see the shark? Like we don't realize that. And then when you see it at the end, it's like terrifying, but you're also like, now I watch it and I'm like, that's a laughable animatronic shark. That's terrible. Like, right? And like Steven Spielberg almost quit the movie because the shark quit working. Like 90% of the time, it kept breaking down, and so you had to continually like build this thing, like rebuild it, and like so you finally just said, like, I'm so tired of this. Like, we're not putting it in the movie until the very end. So if you notice, you really don't see the shark until you see the fin and the barrels, right? So this mastermind made this terrifying entity with barrels and a fin in the water, right? And you barely ever see it, right? So like we overshare though, like especially as our brands, like we overshare. We want to tell everybody because we're excited and we expect people to be excited about what we're excited about. Right, but you know what? You know how people get excited? When they want more. When they want more, they get excited. I'm never excited when I'm like when I go to a conference and somebody just drones on and on and on. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, thank you for all the information. I have it now. I never have to talk to you again. Right? Like, like thank you. Like, right? What I like more is somebody who gives me snippets and helps me understand a bigger picture of what they're doing, right? That's what's engaging and exciting. Good communicators, good writers, good directors. They all know that that's the biggest part of selling something is the anticipation, right? So.
Oh wow!
I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, wow. So can you give us some examples what we could do now to build anticipation as well?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, like don't everybody all at once post like something is coming, because that might be weird. And then they might be confused that like all of you are posting this. But you know, the truth is, like, what you should do is you should start to ask yourself those questions. You really need to start with the questions, because forming that identity is the first step. I tell people all the time, if you don't know who you are, how are you going to communicate it to other people, right? So figure out who you are before you start trying to communicate it. But the next step is talking through, right, and brainstorming. I, as a leader, right, because I really take leadership as a person who leads a company, as somebody who leads a ministry with staff and volunteers and workers. I really want to, when I walk into a room, always know that I don't have the best idea. Like, I know that seems counterintuitive for people, but as a leader, my idea, like, honestly, being a good leader is figuring out that 90% of the time you don't know what you're doing. So, like, and helping and having other people help you figure that out. So what I would say is, with that model, sit down with the people who are closest to you that will give you honest feedback and figure that out. With, okay, who am I? Like, when you think of me, like, what I would like to do is say, find 3 of your closest friends that'll be really honest with you and tell you, when you think about me, what are the 3 words that come to mind, right? Off the top of your head, what are the 3 words that come to mind, right? What are some things that you think I need to improve on in my platform, in my writing, in the way that I talk to people about what I'm doing, right? Can I say this? I'll say this. And I know it's going to hit home for people, so I don't want to be rude, but some of you really need to get more confidence. Like, that is a killer of book proposals, of brand, and of who you are. And if you're spending time asking yourself if you're worth it, then other people are not going to find your value. It's just the truth, right? And I'm telling you right now, you have that value and you just need to use it, okay? Like, everybody has that insecurity, that nagging thing in the back of their head. But the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is who listens to it, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, as a successful person, I could listen to everything everybody else says about who I am and never figure it out. Right? But that won't ever help me, right? Right? That's why I say get 3 people who you can trust will be honest with you, because nobody else's opinions really matter, right?
And I like the idea about the 3 people because many of us are introverts. And I think sometimes then we come across, say, at a writer's conference without confidence because we're just more intimidated in a larger group. But if we knew those 3 words, or we had talked to somebody in a smaller group, that's almost a stepping stone to knowing ourselves well enough to give us the courage to speak up with confidence. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. When you have somebody in your corner, it helps you immensely, right? All right, Rocky isn't Rocky without Mick, right? Right? Like, he doesn't, like, you don't beat Apollo Creed the second time around without Mick, right? You don't beat the Russian. Like, there's so many like pop culture references that you could go to, like, but having somebody in your corner, knowing somebody that somebody has your back, it's key, because you can go back and say, listen, I had some really, but I want to be very clear too. Don't get yes people. Right? Because then you're just making an echo chamber. That's not helpful.
I like the echo chamber.
Right? Like, don't make an echo chamber of how great you are. Find people that are going to tell you hard truths. Like, that's where you find the people that are really going to tell you the things that you need to hear. And know that they're not doing it in a mean way. I give people critiques all the time that I adore in my life. The number one person I critique in my life is on this call, and she shares my last name.
Bethany,
right?
the other Bethany.
She knows that, she knows, but that, because I adore my wife and I want the best for my wife. And when I have somebody who I love and adore, I honestly share information, because like I had a great leader I know tell me one time, how much do you have to hate somebody to shield them from the truth? Right? Like, it's just a weird thought. Like, if you really care about somebody, you're going to be honest with them about the way you feel. You're not going to hide it away, especially if it's for their benefit, right? And so don't find yes people, right? Don't find people who are just going to tell you, yeah, you're great. This is great. You're awesome, right? Because that's really not helpful. Like, I don't surround, and we're really honest with you, I like words of affirmation, but I don't surround myself with people that are going to tell me how great I am. I surround myself with people who are going to kick me in the butt when I need it. Right?
Well, we need that to grow. We need that to grow and stretch ourselves, I think.
And the way I view writers and authorship is, you're in the ultimate like mixer. Like, you have this incredible community of people who all want to support you and love you and push you forward. Like, and it's great, because every writer that's ever written something knows the struggle of trying to get published, trying to get it sold. Like, I talked with Andrew Palau yesterday. He's the son of Luis Palau, and he just released another book, and like, he's like a bestseller, right? And what he said was, like, the easy part's writing the stinking book. Like, he's like, I've got platform and I can't sell anything. Like, we just give these books away because they're going to be dead weight, right? Like, so even he realizes this community is like supportive, but it's hard. It's not easy. Like, and when we think about writing, we just think like, oh, I'm going to write a hit and we're going to get this. And I'm on the beach in Maui, we're done. Like, I'm gonna get my little umbrella drink, and it's gonna be amazing. Like,
yeah, it actually gets harder. Like, that first book, I mean, they're looking at the success of that book. So, like, sometimes you come in as a first-time writer, and it's like an exception to all the rules. I'm speaking from experience. And then because you have no platform, now you are doing everything on the other side. So I always tell people, like, goes right along with what you're saying, Cody, is like, the book is not the win. The book is like an extra product for you as you're building this brand and this audience. So if you feel like getting the book and you've won, then like, this might not be the industry for you. You may need to self-publish and win that way, because people who are in it like competitively, this is like a big picture, long-term game, just like the Blockbuster Netflix example that you gave.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I mean, one thing good communicators know is, like, their brand is their communication. So when they get on stage, they get to talk. But what really drives them and gets them more gigs is their books. Like, I mean, John Acuff, if you've never heard of John Acuff, I look up to him greatly. He's very connected with a company called the Rethink Group. And he's done, I think he's got 6 books out right now. Like, one's Do-Over and one's Finish, giving yourself the gift of done. Stuff Christians Like's another one. Yeah. John Acuff is great. Like, but he's a great example of a guy who started off writing and making funny tweets, and then realized like, oh crap, this is going to be a career. Like, so because like he's this great example of like, he didn't really want to do this. It kind of got shoved on him because like his Twitter took off. And like, so he'll talk about it. Like he'll say like, every day I have to refine what I'm doing. Great leaders refine what they're doing. If you're wondering like, why do I use all this leader rhetoric? When we're talking, this is writing, where it's writer's chat, it's not leader's chat. Well, because like good leaders are successful people, right? And successful people do things well. And so as writers, the leadership platform, like as a leader, as a person who's pushing forward, I don't want to learn necessarily how to write better. I want to learn how to lead better, because those things translate into being a better writer and my brand continuing to expand, right? And knowing how people think and how people communicate, and like that's really a good place, I think, for people to start.
Wow. Leslie had a question. I'm scanning back up there. I thought was good. And that probably goes well to talk about right now, is how do you distinguish yourself from other authors who are writing the same genre? For example, I write historical Christian fiction, but there are many doing the same, and many who are writing the same period, the setting, so it's getting that voice, that uniqueness. How do we do that? Do you have some hints for us on that as part of our branding?
Yeah. I have great, are you ready for this? It's going to be super profound. Okay. Everything that they're doing, don't do any of it. Okay. You want to set yourself apart from the people who are writing the same stuff as you. Don't do the same stuff they're doing, right? Right. Like, don't market the same way they do. Right? What are they doing on Facebook? Are you doing research on what they're doing on Facebook? Are you doing research on how they're using Instagram? Like, can I tell you something? I know people are really, I know everybody here probably likes Twitter, but Twitter's dying. Okay, and I'm saying this in a loving way for the market. I know Bethany's like, I hate you so much for saying this, but like all the research right now is pointing to Twitter being obsolete in the next 5 years, because people are not utilizing Twitter. They're utilizing Facebook and Instagram, right? And the way people are connecting now is different. And Twitter is great for people within the bracket of like 28 to 48, and about that age range. But millennials are not on Twitter at all. So if you have any hope of using or abusing the millennial market, like, get off Twitter and get on Instagram. Get really efficient at Instagram and
Jill
Facebook.
loves you. Jill's
Right?
on in the chat room, and she's loving you right now.
Listen, here's the thing. Don't completely abandon Twitter. We have to have something that Facebook doesn't own. But it's a hot mess, and their algorithm change. I don't know what they're gonna do. So
Yeah. And I want you to understand too. Like, I don't like. I like Twitter. Like, I haven't posted on Twitter forever because I realized like that's not where my market is. So like, it's not because I'm like, oh, I don't like Twitter. It's just like, that's just not where my market is. My market's on Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. And here's the truth. Like, my wife just sent me a text because she was like, she and I do research on this stuff all the time. Like Snapchat and Instagram, that's the only way that millennials are getting their information now. Like, I know you want me to like reassure you and tell you like, no, you can post on Twitter or Facebook's fine. But like, if you really want to sell your book, you're going to have to start investing in the knowledge that you need to do Instagram, not adequately, well. You're going to have to do it well. Because if you can't do it, if adequate does not cut it anymore. It has to be excellent, or it's just not worth putting your time into. And here's the deal. Jill Lancourt is on this call actually. She lives vintage. If you've not looked, like, her page is the perfect example of how to run an Instagram. And I'm not just bragging on her because I like her and she's my friend. I'm bragging on her as a professional who respects the professionality of She Lives Vintage. She knows how to do Instagram well. Yeah. Right.
And she's got a serious writer course.
She does.
If you haven't taken that, I'll promote that real quick, because it's a great course, and it gives you, especially if you don't know much about Instagram, it's a good start. So thank you, Jill, for being there.
Jill, throw your link in there.
The other thing that this is just the final thing for questions to ask and how you can do that, is millennials get talked about a lot because they're the buying market right now.
They are.
But I also want you to think about Generation Z, okay, the I generation that's coming up after millennials. We don't talk about them enough in the market. We don't talk about, I don't think professionals talk about them enough. And there's really not good metrics or study been done on Generation Z yet for their market potential. But you've got to understand, they're going to be a huge generation of consumers. And the way that they consume products is going to be different than it ever has before, because Amazon right now is destroying Walmart. It used to be Walmart was king, and Amazon has come in, and Walmart is very rapidly declining. And companies like Walmart that would used to coast off their laurels are changing the way that they do business because they have to. Right? It once again, it's that Netflix blockbuster mentality. Netflix embraced new and stayed alive. Blockbuster just rejected it and died off. I think there's 3 Blockbuster stores open in the rest of the United States.
Wow.
And they're all in Alaska. So
they were talking about the millennials today on the news, and like it's a fact that's been spinning around for a long time and hasn't changed, is that millennials will spend more money on a company that is transparent and has some sort of service or connection to a better good, like a mission with it. They will spend more on that company because they see their dollars going somewhere better. And on the news, they were talking about it today, but people like give millennials a bad rap, but they're not in high school anymore. I put that in the comments. Like, so when you hear millennial, you can't think teenager. You are thinking young adult, college, and older. Like, I'm at the top of the millennial scale, so me and down. Cody's
I'm in the millennials.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a millennial. Jill's a millennial. Like, my wife's a millennial. Like, when we talk about millennials, we kind of think like, oh, they're in high school. No, actually, there are no millennials in high school anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It is all 20-somethings now. And so we talked about millennials like they were this like, oh, no, millennials, like, they're the market right now. Like, we need to focus on that. Like, the millennial market is one of the largest consumer markets right now. Like,
Barna just came out with a whole study on them, but they just came out with a study on Generation Z too, and I put that in the chat book.
That's great.
Yeah, on that. So they're really looking at that, and as writers, if we could be aware of that, going back to Leslie's question, sometimes we could see a trend or just a unique way that we could market our brand, our entire company, instead of, which would lead to marketing the book. It'll be the specific on that way. That is wild. Hey, it's almost 10 of. I have a feeling a lot of people would like to come on in and join the conversation a little bit.
Yeah,
So let's invite everybody back on if you want to come on in and ask questions or join the conversation for the last 10 minutes on that way. We're going to say, just so while you're here, we know this is just the tip of the iceberg. So we asked Cody to schedule 2 weeks in a row with us. So he will be back with us next Tuesday also to be part of this conversation. So if anybody can't come back in, we always will say that. Come put it in the chat that you can't come back in, because sometimes if we've stopped your video, we need to release you from the chat. So if you can't get in, Dell can't get in, she says. Okay, I'll take care of that. Anybody, if you want to come on, go ahead and ask questions or comments. We'd like to have that part of that. Question.
I think Tina does it. You're muted.
Okay.
There.
If I could ask a question, I have like a tagline, and I have like branding that's the same across all my websites. But I have speculative fiction that tends to be very dark and is moving toward like more of a crossover market. But then I also have divine encouragement that's very Christian and has a lot of nonfiction. So it's separate sites, but I have wings and things that cross over on the sites. Do I need to marry those sites into one site and go from one place? Or is it okay to have those separate, because they really are aiming toward different audiences?
I think not only is it okay, but I would encourage it. I would separate.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. One thing that we call is brand blurring, right? Is brand blurring can ruin a brand, and it can dissolve a brand. Good example of this is in Nike what was it, 2001, 2002, opened a branch called Nike 6.0. And Nike 6.0 was the like surfer, skater, longboarder brand. They had, all sorts of, different things that they did. And what happened in those years is that Nike took on an entirely new platform that they were not prepared for. And so Nike took a hit in the stocks in about 2010, 2011, because Nike 6.0 had really taken off as this, surfer, brand that they took on. Now they still operate that company, but they're very clear that it is a separate division. And, so that was something for Nike that was good for the company long term, but hurt their brand because it brand blurred, basically.
So it's good to still keep logos so that they look similar, but keep the marketing separate. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the color scheme is a real big thing. Color scheme, psychologically, they've done a ton on color scheme. That is a big thing with brands, is their color scheme. Are you a happy color scheme? Are you a low color scheme? Are you a modern color scheme? So if keeping the color schemes would be different, that would be good.
Okay.
So they're not the same. So, but yeah, okay. I would encourage that. So
that's helpful. Thank you.
I would love, maybe next week you go into that a little bit more about the color ideas and how do you come up with the logo, or I know because you got some graphic design background, so I think you could probably add a lot to that for us as far as ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of that might come up with this idea of talking to 3 trusted people that would not be yes people, but give us some idea of what kind of our brand could be. Correct? Is that where
absolutely.
Come from?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about that next week. Next week, we're going to talk about uniquely better. So we're not going to talk about uniquely different. We're going to talk about uniquely better. So that's going to be some of the topic for next week. So, but that's definitely going to come up is color scheme and,
Okay, great. And, back to Leslie's question, how you distinguish yourself. I think it's somewhat hard. It sounds like you answered that question. It is first look at what they're doing and then try to find what's unique that's not being done. Is that how you answered that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I say look at what your competition's doing and then don't do it. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because to stand out in it. Like I'm going to the Philly conference to talk about battle of the brands, how to stand out in this sea of open market, because everybody we're in this age where creativity and being able to create has never been easier. Like it is easier to create content and info. It's easier now than it's ever been. And so being able to make sure you're doing something, hey Jake, make sure you're doing something that's unique and different from your competition might be easier than you think. And we'll get into some of that next week.
Okay, that'll be great.
Are you going to be at Blue Ridge, Cody?
I will not be at Blue Ridge. No, I will not. So, yeah. I'm on the Serious Rider tours. That's where I'm going. Those are great. Now, I'm not saying Blue Ridge isn't great. I'm just saying I'm going to be at the Serious Rider tours because that's where I'm investing my time right now. So
yeah, Cody will be in Ohio and North Carolina. North Carolina, September, Ohio, November.
And what was that Philly piece?
I'll be in Philadelphia at the Greater Philly Conference.
Yay!
I remember where that's going to be. Yeah, yay!
When is that?
Oh gosh.
It's July 26th to 28th.
Yes, that.
Cody, where in North Carolina will you be in September?
At the North Carolina Christian Writers Conference.
Liberty.
It is Liberty, yeah. So.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, I'll also be at Kentucky, the Kentucky Christian Writers Conference. So I'll be there as well in June. So.
In June?
Yes.
I don't know that one. Okay.
So.
Other questions we got? We got about 5 minutes, guys. Time to hop on. Don't be afraid. Let's have confidence.
What suggestion would you give to someone who's just beginning this process on how to develop their brand?
Ooh, I love that question. Start on the right page. There's so many people that have like they're 10 or 15 years into this, and they have to realign all of their thinking into this different. They're like, I don't even know how to think like this. So start fresh. All right, this is a perfect place to start. You start asking the same questions. Who am I? What is the tangible thing I want to accomplish, and what's the abstract thing that I'm about? That's the me, mission, vision. You're starting off in a great place, right? You're like, oh, I don't know, I'm just starting all this stuff. That's awesome, because you can start on the right foot and not have to rewrite everything, as time progresses.
So I have one question. This
Yes.
is, where would you say then you spend your most of your time? If you're working on social media, I know you're laughing already. I try to do this, I try to do that. I'm on Facebook, I'm on emails. So where would you spend most of your time?
Well, I mean, that's a really great question. I think, see, for me, so my platform, I just tell you from my platform. I won't tell you, you'll have to adapt it for you. But for me and my platform, going to speak, perform, and, do instructional stuff for leaders, because that's really my ballpark. I am spending a lot of my time on Instagram and Facebook. Really more Instagram than I ever have thought I would. Instagram stories. Like Vicky Duerstock and I, which Vicky's awesome. I don't know if you met Vicky. She's been on here.
Yeah, she's in here every.
Okay, yeah. So Vicky Duerstock's awesome. And we were talking about stories, right? So for her, Instagram stories, they don't really help her grow her platform, right? For me, they're great. They're a great way to connect with my people that I'm connected with. Because for me, numbers don't matter as much, because I'm not currently trying to sell a book, right? I'm not trying to get all this stuff out there. So for me, the mission and vision that I have is to connect people with hope, right? And to engage pastors and leaders across the country with how to make themselves more marketable as an organization. Right. So that's really where I'm coming from. So my intention is completely different. You look at my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook numbers. I got 2,000 friends on Facebook. I got 200 some likes. But that's not my intention. My intention is to build connections that get me speaking places. Right. So I don't really, those platform numbers don't matter as much to me as they do to you. So for me, it's Instagram. It's Instagram stories. Right. So if that helps.
So it goes back to the first. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Del.
No, I was just saying it goes back to the first question of who am I and what am I trying to do?
It does.
It always does. It always does. And that's why I say, there's all these questions you're going to have, and that's good. But until you answer the first question, you're nowhere, right? That's the most vital question you can ask yourself in branding is, who am I? What am I trying to accomplish? And how am I going to make it happen? Right? Yeah, Jill, what were you saying?
Just going off of the Instagram stories thing, back this summer when I talked about building your brand on Instagram, I mentioned stories very briefly, and I was focusing more on what you're posting in your feed. But what you're seeing now is as things adapt, Instagram stories is really what is the focus as opposed to your Instagram feed. And I was telling Bethany the other day, a lot of my stuff is changing on Instagram, but I'll get 100, 150 likes on a photo, but I'm getting 500 views in my Instagram stories. Mm-hmm. That's a huge difference. That means every single story that I'm seeing, over 500 people are looking at that as opposed to 100 likes on a photo. So if you want to get yourself out there, like Cody said, use Instagram stories. It's huge and it's fun. It's so fun, and you can do so many things with it. That was all I wanted to say.
Is your serious writing class, Jillian, is that serious writer class that you have on Instagram, does it cover stories?
The one, Build Your Brand, really doesn't, but it's coming out on Serious Writer Academy. It's called Instagram for Pros. And not only do I talk about Instagram stories, but they have a new feature called Highlights, which go hand in hand with stories. And if you're using Instagram to its full potential with all these features, it's like having a mini website. It will change everything. It's game changers. So that's coming to the Academy using Instagram as a professional, as a pro. Yeah, those are highlights
right here.
It's amazing what you can do on Instagram. It's literally to me, it's everything you want to tell anybody before they see your website. You can put it all right there on your Instagram, and it's public. Like Facebook seems so personal. You need to be friends to kind of connect or have mutual friends. Instagram's for anybody. They can find out exactly what you're about, who you are, what they're going to get out of you, like that. It's great. Sorry.
No, but I think we need to have Jill back on again. Instagram stories. How about we'll put you get you on the list, Jill. We'd love to have you back, giving us hints and stuff like that. Tina asked, do you have any idea when that course is going to be available?
I can tell you. Jill, do you know the date? Because I can look it up.
Yes, this is my husband who buys me all the flowers for my Instagram. This is Jacob, my husband. It should be up soon. So it's been sent off and it's done. So it'll be up soon.
Okay. Sounds great.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tune into that class. I'm just telling you all.
I think that sounds like a perfect class.
We have another question in the chat that kind of got overlooked. As a historical writer, should I only focus on writing in one time period? This is from Leslie. Or focus on a subject theme such as abuse over different time periods?
That's a great question. I would say, I hate to say this, it all goes back to who you are. Like, if you're a historical writer, write historical fiction. Like, write historical fiction. That's great. And a timepiece is not going to pigeonhole you, right? Like, you could do ancient Greek, you could do, Civil War era. It doesn't really matter if you've figured out what you are trying to accomplish, right? Like, so the writing aspect, when we talk about it, it's a much broader picture, right? It's a much broader picture when you figure out your identity as a brand, right? And that's why I said asking those questions is what we start with. So you got to ask those questions, before you, it's like a sequence. You really have to know the answer to this question before you can answer any of the other ones, right? Like a puzzle. Have you ever done an escape room? Anybody ever done an escape room? They're amazing. By the way, learning experience and team building, great. But the great thing about an escape room is most of them build on each other, right? So you have to start with the first puzzle before you can move on to the second. And that's just so true of branding. Like, you have to start with the first most important question of identity before you can move on to anything else.
So that's our homework between now and next week, everybody. Start, I just like what Rebecca put in there. Just start somewhere, but start with that important question and think about that in the next week. And then we're going to have Cody back with us next week to expand on this and kind of go a little bit deeper. Thank you, Cody, so much for today and for committing 2 weeks to us.
No problem.
And you guys have this has just been awesome. I have all sorts of little notes here, so I have my homework to follow up on that way. So as we wrap up the recording part of this, we'll invite you guys to stay afterwards for our after party for about 10-15 minutes. And thank you so much for being with us either live today or if you're watching the replay. We're so glad you were with us on that. And I don't know about you guys, I'm excited and ready to work on my branding. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.